Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. If you've ever listened to the hypnotic percussions in the clip you just watched, you have without a doubt heard the innovations of the subject of today's video in the person of the legendary Count Ossie. Reggae music was, at its inception, the music for the masses that echoed the plight of the sufferers worldwide. Rastafari isn't just a religious influence on the genre, but is inseparable from its very soul, with its philosophy inspired by Marcus Garvey and centered on African heritage, resistance to oppression, and spiritual elevation. The Nyabingi drum is central to the ceremonial music of the Rastafarian movement, and its rhythms was among the foundations of reggae music itself, as it would crystallize into what we now know as the one-drop beat that every reggae drummer practices till date. Despite being the ultimate outcasts of Jamaican society, Rasta music would become the cornerstone of his music industry for several decades to come, a phenomenon I like to refer to as the Count Ossie Revolution. This mythical figure heavily inspired the first generation of the island's modern musicians, like members of the Scatterlights, who sought after him in his camps high up in the hills, seeking knowledge, guidance, and collaboration. Against all odds, this incredible drummer and his crew became one of the most important figures in Jamaican music history, among a handful of reggae's greatest innovators, and one of the all-time master percussionists of modern music. But who was this titan, and what was his story? Let's take a look at the legendary Count Ossie, the father of Rasta music. He was born Oswald Williams on March 26, 1926, in a small quarrying village a few miles from Kingston in the hills above Bull Bay. Even before the age of 10, he was playing drums in the Boys Brigade and a local marching band. As he came of age, in his mid-teens, his family would move to a place called Slipdock Road in East Kingston, but he would find himself gravitating to a place in West Kingston called the Dongle, a slum and literal dump site, where the first generation of Rastafarians used to meet to discuss their faith and the teachings of Marcus Garvey. He became a devoted member of the movement and formed his own camp in a place called Salt Lane. It was during that period that he met and came under the influence of a man called Brother Job. This man was no Rasta, but instead a member of a legendary order of drummers called the Boru, also social outcasts in Jamaica. They first appeared on the island in the 18th century at the very peak of slavery. These men originally came from present-day Ghana in West Africa and were skilled drummers whose drum play was known to lift the morale of their fellow slaves for more than a century. By 1949, they were kindred spirits of the Rastas and despised by the colonial establishment. So back to Brother Job, he became Count Ossie's mentor and teacher, and building on his foundation as a drummer in his childhood, the young Count Ossie acquired exceptional skills in what we now know as Nyabingi drums. He would incorporate his drumming into an essential component of Rasta reasoning sessions, and that practice's popularity would catch on like wildfire as he would teach others that skill during a period when that movement was growing rapidly. But it wasn't just Rastas that Count Ossie was attracting, as by 1948, Kingston's leading jazz instrumentalists were converging on Count Ossie's camp to play with him and his band late into the night. In 1951, Count Ossie's camp at Salt Lane was destroyed by Hurricane Charlie, and he would relocate to his now famous camp in the Wickie Hills. It became a vibrant meeting point for the Rastafarians, who by those times were like an endangered species. And more notably, that camp became a hub for the super talented musicians like trombonists Rico Rodriguez and Don Drummond, drummer Lloyd Knibb, Roland Alfonso, keyboardist Jackie Mitu, and guitarist Ernest Ranglin. Word of Ossie's brilliance had spread through the ranks of musicians all over the country, and they would all come to tap into it. It was from that scene that legendary ska band, the Scatterlights, was formed, when a young producer named Clement Coxon Dodd came to Ossie's camp and handpicked them to be the backing band in his new studio called Studio One. His influence was massive, albeit understated, but it would soon get thrust into the mainstream when popular rumba dancer Margaret Mafood discovered Count Ossie's music and chose them to be a part of her performance at the popular talent contest named Vera John's Opportunity Hour in 1959. And in that same year, they would be recorded for the first time. Prince Buster, a former employee of Coxon Dodd, was now in a competition with his ex-boss and other big-time producers. He was desperate to make a hit in the very early days of ska, and he got the brainwave to incorporate the Nyabingi rhythms of Count Ossie and his crew into a song called O Carolina by a group called the Folks Brothers. So as the story goes, Prince Buster would travel to Wickie Hills to convince Count Ossie and his crew to come down from the hills and record the music. Count Ossie obliged him and upon release, it changed the game. It became not only a commercial hit, but a landmark recording in Jamaican history that introduced the Afrocentric elements of Rasta drum rhythms to a mainstream audience. It soon led to a scramble by other producers who were all desperate to record with Count Ossie and tap into that wave, and he would cut singles for the likes of Harry Moody, Vincent Chin, and Coxsone Dodd. It took a while longer for the stigma around Rastafarians in Jamaica to go away, but one thing is for certain, the very first place where the barriers were broken was in the music industry. A very early sign that things were going to loosen up societally was the visit of His Majesty Haile Selassie to Jamaica, a day remembered as Crown Nation Day, the 21st of April 1966, when almost 100,000 people, led by thousands of Rastafarians, converged on the airport to receive him. Count Ossie and his band would make history when they performed for the Emperor in Jamaica's King's House, the official residence of the island's Governor General. He formally named his band the Mystic Revelation of Rastafari and would win gold medals back-to-back in Jamaica's annual Festival of Arts in 1965 and 1966. Count Ossie and his group released the groundbreaking album Crown Nation in 1972, a critically acclaimed project that struck chords beyond reggae circles and was highly celebrated in jazz circles worldwide. In fact, so highly rated that jazz legend Duke Ellington himself went to visit Count Ossie at his camp in the hills when he visited Jamaica the next year. By then, roots reggae was firing on all cylinders, and the Nyabingi drums was an integral part of the music. His group's international success saw them undertake their first foreign tour, and they got an overwhelming welcome at the Caribbean Festival of Arts in Guyana, followed by strong performances and lectures at several prestigious universities in North America, topped off by a powerful and well-received performance at the Newport Jazz Festival in the same year. In 1975, the band released their second album, In the Brilliant Tales of Mozambique, and it seemed like the sky was their limit when multiple tragedies would strike in under a year. Right before a performance at the Kingston National Stadium on October the 18th, 1976, in honor of Jamaica's national heroes, heavy rainfall sparked a stampede, which led to casualties. I believe demoralized, Count Ossie took a drive to the parish of St. Thomas to relax and clear his head, and on his way back, he lost his life in a car crash after being run off the road by a drunk bus driver at the age of 50. A terrible blow to the reggae fraternity, the Rasta community, and Jamaica's music industry as a whole. When he passed on, roots reggae was in its creative peak, and the Nyabingi elements which he introduced had become an integral part of the music's DNA, which had by then become intertwined with Rastafari, with A-list artists like Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, The Burning Spear, and even non-Rasta icons like Jimmy Cliff, drawing heavily from his influence. There's so much to say about this great man. His influence predated Jamaica's music industry and not only guided the instrumentalists that would birth genres like ska and eventually reggae, but truly transformed that music from a secular party sound to one rooted in social consciousness, Afrocentrism, and spiritual enlightenment. Without a doubt, one of the most important figures in Jamaica's music history. So there you have it. Thank you for watching this video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.